Welcome to Sheepdog Nation Podcast, the only place on the internet where law enforcement and their families can come to be understood, supported, and stood up for. Here's your host, the always entertaining, down-to-earth, yet in-your-face truth speaker and Leo herself, Autumn Schmidt.
What is up, Sheepdog Nation? Welcome to Season 3, Episode 2 of the Sheepdog Nation podcast with your host, me, Autumn Schmidt. Today, I am excited to introduce you to a fellow podcaster. He is a retired watch commander from Colorado. He was also in the military. He holds 3 master's degrees. And he's also teaching college right now. And he blogs and he writes for multiple police magazines, and he has his own podcast. So without further ado, I'm really excited to welcome Pattrick Fitzgibbons onto the show. This is going to be a good show, so pay attention. Hey, Pattrick, thank you so much for coming on to the Sheepdog Nation podcast with us. Can you tell the nation a little bit about yourself?
Well, Autumn, thank you for inviting me on your show. I love it. I listen to it all the time, and you're doing a great job. So a little bit about me. Well, I'm a 23-year veteran of law enforcement here in Colorado, and I recently retired at the beginning of March. Before that, I was in the military for a little bit. But now I'm enjoying retirement. I have a lot of things on my plate. I started a podcast about 3 years ago called the CJ Evolution Podcast. And like your show, Autumn, it's growing and I'm having a great time. And I'm just living life.
That's awesome. I guess I didn't realize you had just retired. So congratulations on that. That's awesome.
Yes. Yeah. I retired. I took a couple weeks off, and my official retirement date was March 1st. So thank you. I appreciate that.
Wow, that's awesome. So can you tell us, okay, so you said you started a podcast. Obviously, I know that because I was on it, which thank you for having me. Love your podcast as well. Can you tell us, tell the nation, we'll tell them the name of it, number one, but then number two, what made you want to do that?
Well, the name of the show is CJ Evolution. You can find it on iTunes and Stitcher. But about 3 years ago, Autumn, I was just like, there's no friggin' podcast. Well, there was some law enforcement podcasts out there at the time, but I thought, I could do this. Mm-hmm. I mean, and I started it because I think there's a lot of misconceptions out there among the public. Even though obviously a lot of my listeners, as well as your listeners, are Leos and are in the field, but there's people that don't know anything about law enforcement that listen, and I think there's a lot of misconceptions out there. So I started the show mainly just to kind of educate people better and talk about the issues. And law enforcement, Autumn, it's generally a negative environment. We're surrounded by a lot of negativity, and I wanted to inspire and motivate the listeners, and that. The call that you're going on might suck, but you should be grateful to have a job. And I just wanted to inspire and motivate and educate people.
I love it. And so what kind of things, what can they learn on the number one criminal justice podcast, which I love? You have a huge podcast. You have so many episodes. I love it.
Yeah. Well, thank you again. And the reason why it's growing and big is because people like you coming on the show, so I appreciate it. And I talk about I've had use of force issue topics that I've talked about. I've talked about Miranda issues and custody, chain of custody issues, and just crime scene. I had Barry Fisher on the show last year. If you don't know who Barry Fisher is, he wrote crime scene investigation techniques, and so I talk about that stuff, which is good. That's the premise behind the show. But I really, really get pumped up when I have people like Ryan Muncie on the show, and these badass Navy SEALs are on the show that are doing great things. They're motivating. They're pumping people up. They're, just getting people excited. And all of it is related. We can relate back to the criminal justice field again, because I mean, it's a negative environment most of the time. And I just want to get back and motivate and educate people. And I mean, I can go on and on about the people I've had on the show, but that's pretty much what we talk about. I mean, a variety of topics that we could tie back into the criminal justice field. So
you hear that, Sheepdog Nation, another binge-worthy podcast, because I know I have a lot of my officers who are on midnights, and they're like, Autumn, send me some stuff because I need to get through midnights awake. And so that's good. So there's another binge worthy podcast. So Pattrick, can you tell us like where you're from or like what part of the country you live in, and like tell me about your policing career? I want to hear about that.
Well, I live in Colorado. I live just outside of Boulder, for those of you who are familiar or not familiar. And it's just, Boulder's probably about 30 minutes northwest of Denver. Been in Colorado most of my life, with the exception of the Army. But my policing career started in a smaller agency in southeastern Colorado. I was there for about a decade, a little over. At the same time, I was going through graduate school. When I was, before I left my first department, I graduated from graduate school, and I kind of got recruited into the private sector. Didn't like that crap. Wanted to be in police work again. I did that for about 6 months. I was traveling all over the place. Then I got hired on with an agency on the Front Range, and that's where I retired from. Just my law enforcement career is the same as a lot of people out there listening. Is I started on patrol, did that for a while, moved to investigations, was promoted, was a street supervisor, kind of progressed up through the ranks and retired as a commander. So.
That's awesome. And so as a commander, like what were you in charge of? Like what kind of people did you, like how many people, or like what were they doing?
Well, I was an operations commander, so I was in charge of all the patrol officers on the street, as well as like code enforcement, things like that. So, mainly I managed like the sergeants, Autumn, the sergeants are the most, I think, probably some of the most important people in a department. They're the ones managing the street, as well as the corporals. I don't know if you have corporals in your agency, but so that's what I did. I oversaw, kind of mentored, coached, guided patrol division. Of course, code enforcement, I don't know how it is where you're at, but they deal with like animal issues, just like zoning, shit like that. So that's what I did, day in and day out for a while.
So like, what would you say? Okay, so we talk a lot about leadership on here, and in law enforcement currently, like we talk a lot about how, there's definitely lack of leadership. You and I've talked about it before. And so like, what would you say from your experience? Clearly, I mean, you supervised, you led very pivotal people inside of a police department. Like you led the leaders. What can you tell, like, what would you say the hardest part about that was?
I think for me, the hardest part, first of all, it was an honor. Any time you're in a leadership role and you're selected for those roles, I mean, you should view it as an honor, because those are really, somebody thinks you're doing a good job and you can lead. Now, the flip side to that, Autumn, is that there's too many friggin' idiots that are in charge and shouldn't be in charge. But I think one of the hardest roles for me was to discipline my friends over the years, because I kind of grew up in law enforcement, with a core group of people, and then I kind of fast tracked and I got promoted above them. So it was literally one day I had people that were in charge of me, and the next day I was in charge of them. But that was difficult for me. But you get through it through communication and being authentic and not being fake, and having those discussions sometimes. But those were difficult sometimes, especially when you had to discipline friends. So. Those are probably the hardest part. And, but yeah, I mean, it's just when you're at that level of a commander or senior leadership in an organization, it's a different view. I'm not saying that a patrol officer's view is not important, but, at a command level or chief level or whatever, you got that 30,000 foot view. So you have to realize that every decision you make is going to affect everybody else.
Yeah, absolutely.
So those are tough decisions sometimes. So you have to learn how to balance it. So,
and that's really good. It's a really good point. And now, do you listen, or is there anybody or any specific training that you took in leadership or mindset or anything specific from your time as a watch commander? Like, is there anything that stands out in your mind that you took, or somebody you listened to, or a book you read that you could pass along that like just kind of changed your life?
Well, yeah, I think it was a culmination of things. I mean, I gravitated towards the leaders and the people that were positive and that were, inspiring me and motivating me. I mean, we probably all work your listeners work with people that just bring them down and shit. So over the years, I don't know if I could, just say one or two people. There's just been a lot of people in my life, a lot of books that I had read along the way that really kind of molded me. And I view me or myself as a work in progress. And even when I left, I mean, just because I was a commander, I was always learning. And that's the key, is you got to keep learning, man. You got to be open. You got to put your friggin' ego at the door. It will really help me. I mean, I never really, it's going to sound crazy, but I never really cared about rank. I never did. I mean, I mean, it's important. I'm not saying it's not important, but anybody can, just because, let me put it this way, just because you get promoted doesn't mean people are going to respect you. 100%. They might they're going to respect the rank because they have to, especially in a paramilitary organization. But just because you get promoted, who gives a shit? Right. A lot of people are like, okay, you got to prove yourself all over again. So yeah, there were key people in my life, key supervisors, sergeants. I had FCOs that helped me, mentored me along the way. I love reading, Lewis House, Tim Ferriss, all those people that kind of pump me up even to this day. Northwestern, I was honored to go to Northwestern staff and command school, which really, I thought, if listeners can have a chance to go, the National Academy, FBI Academy is also a good resource that kind of helps you develop as a leader. But I would say, for your listeners out there, Anna, first of all, you have to be willing to learn. You have to be willing to accept that you don't know everything, and it's a constant process, man. I mean, leadership's like it's the hot friggin' topic. Everybody talks leadership. But you really, really have to practice it. You have to be a student of leadership. You have to be willing to learn every day. And I think that's where a lot of leaders, quote, fall short, is they want to be the smartest fucking guy in the room.
100%.
And I'm telling you, I never wanted to be the smartest guy in the room. I wanted to be the guy sitting there learning from people who are smarter than me. So again, it comes back to ego and, checking your ego at the door. Humility goes a long way. I think that's pivotal in becoming a leader.
And I think thank you for such powerful points right now, because how many times have we gotten around, and especially on the job, but life in general, people who just, they've got to be the best. They've got to be number one. They've got to know it all. And that's not necessarily what a leader is. And in my mind, that's not the leader that I want to hang out with all the time. I want to hang out with a humble person who carries a lot of humility, and it is willing to be like, yeah, I don't know everything. Let's figure it out together, because then we're part of a team, and stuff like that. Yeah, absolutely. Hands down. I love that. And, and I love what you said too. And Sheepdog Nation, I want you guys to hear this, and I'm just going to underline it and exclamation mark it, because it's so true. Pattrick said, you've got to be willing to learn too. You've got to be willing to learn and become better, and sit back and be like, okay, I don't know everything. I've been doing this thing for years and years and years. One thing that I have found very recently, that cops tend to do is they tend to freaking get really upset if somebody challenges them, because, they've been doing the job for 15, 20, 25 years. And the thing is and that's okay in some aspects, because I totally get it, right? It's like, geez, don't, I've done this. You're not going to tell me. But sometimes, we got to sit back and just listen to what the other side is saying. Listen to what this person, if they have a good point, because I've got to say, one of my biggest qualms about modern day policing is I feel like we aren't innovative very much. I feel like we do a lot of the same things. And so I think maybe that gets us in that trap. What do you think, Pattrick? As far as,
I agree. I agree 100%. I mean, some of the best ideas that I saw, when I was still on the job, came from patrol officers. Didn't come from the meeting of the minds, the command staff. I mean, there's nothing, again, you have to be innovative. And again, it goes back to what we're saying, where you have to be open to new ideas. Look, I love talking. I used to love talking to the officers, especially the younger officers, because they, as far as technology and shit like that, they can really promote the department through social and other things. They got their finger there. Me as an old guy, give me a break. but I agree. You have to be willing to have an open mind and put your ego at the door. And I used to sit through meetings, and meetings. And I'm not a big meeting person anyway, but, just listen to the same old shit day in and day out. And some of it was important. I'm not saying it all was not important. I'm just saying this, we have to start listening to other people. All right. We have to get the department involved. We have to get the officers involved because they have really ideas, and not that you're going to implement everything. I mean, it's not realistic, but you have to be able to be innovative. Yeah. Because people, Autumn, and your listeners know, people are not flocking to law enforcement.
No.
In case you are wondering, the listener out there, it used to be where people were, flocking to cop jobs everywhere. People are leaving. Attrition rates are through the roof now. And mainly because the economy is so great, people want to try their shit, which is great. But even more reason that we have to, we have to push the envelope. We have to be innovative. We have to think outside of the box, even though that's a beaten up phrase, but we have to look at new strategies to push, our organizations to the future.
I couldn't agree more. That words are right out of my mouth. So this leads me into something that I kind of want to talk about now. Pattrick, have you ever? I've got a couple different questions that kind of go all into one. Have you ever been injured on the job?
No, I never have. I was really fortunate. I mean, I've been in foot chases and fights and things like that, but I was never injured, and I think part of the reason for that, or a big part, is that I try to take care of myself really well, and I work out a lot, try to stay in shape even though I'm getting a little older, and I think that kind of helped me a lot along the way. I stayed in shape. Not that I'm a friggin' crazy Navy SEAL or something. Not that SEALs aren't crazy, but I'm not like a huge buff guy. But I've taken care of myself for the years, and I think that helped me, avoid some injury. I'm not saying I didn't have like a sprained injury or sprained, ankle along the way and shit like that, but I was never hurt. Does that make sense?
Yeah. And okay, so that's good. And I love that you say that. And part of the reason that you probably weren't was because you took good care of yourself. Maybe, when you felt run down, maybe, you took the day off, or when you were on your days off, maybe you took the time for yourself or something like that. I think that's key. And I think as a lot of officers, we don't do that. I know, I never focused as much on self-care, especially as a 21-year-old police officer who was just, ready to get out there and, do my thing. Obviously it wasn't the greatest thing because I ended up getting hurt because I didn't pay attention. So I really love how you said that, you took really good care of yourself. And one of the reasons why I love following you and reading your content and stuff like that is because I do think that, when we're talking about innovation, you were definitely, you're like, I want to say, what's like the term? It's like above the 8 ball, before the 8 ball. I don't really know, but you don't take this the wrong way, but I don't see, watch commanders, people who've been on the job, as long as you have, blogging and creating podcasts and, writing articles and speaking out and doing these things, being a little bit above your, ahead of your time. I also happen to know that you have 3 master's degrees. You don't see that. And so what made you do that? What made you kind of step out and be a little innovative on your own?
Well, I mean, I think a lot of it was a mind shift for me, Autumn. I shouldn't say a lot of it. It was, I was tired of being, I was that bitter cop, not that I wasn't, pissed off all the time. I wasn't pissed off all the time, but I felt myself, the longer you do the job, at least for me, I'm not speaking for everybody else, people don't call the cops when they're happy. They call it when you call the cops when shit's hitting the fan. So like most cops on the street, I was getting kind of burned out. I was getting cynical, and I realized that, I couldn't keep going down this path. And about, 6-7 years ago, I really said, you know what, I just got to start being more positive. I got to, hang out with some different people. Not that I don't love my brothers and sisters in blue, but I really did a mind shift where I started meditating. I started, I worked out a lot, but I started working out more, and I started, putting positive content into my body. It's what I mean. What I mean is, reading and reading books that were, inspirational, motivational. So I think for me, that was pivotal for me, Autumn. And anybody can do what I did. There's no secret. Everybody wants to know. Everybody says to me all the time, Pat, how did you do this? How did you start a podcast? How did you start writing for, police magazines and stuff? And I said, dude, it's easy.
Mm-hmm.
Figure out your why. Once I figured out the why, the how is going to follow.
Mm-hmm.
So again, for me, it was the mind shift where, there's no special secret sauce. I mean, I just chose to start thinking differently and change the way I think. Not that I don't have bad days, but, I wake up and I'm pumped for the day, and I can't wait to talk to people like you. I can't wait to blog. I can't wait to, do things on social and grow my show and just connect with people and give back to law enforcement. But again, beating this is, mindset for me is what really, really changed my life.
Yeah, but like when did you know? Like when did you make that mindset shift? Like, did something happen like on duty, or did you see somebody ahead of you doing it? Like what?
No, nothing. It wasn't any pivotal. It wasn't any moment in time. I think for me, Autumn, it was like a culmination of things.
Mm-hmm.
I was falling out of passion for law enforcement. And this was six or 7 years ago. And I like to think I was a good cop. I rose to the ranks. But part of the reason I retired too is that I wanted to do different things, and I was tired of, again, just a negative environment. There were people in my agency and that were positive and motivated, but I just wanted to surround myself and immerse myself with people out there that are doing great things. They're giving back more. Not that you don't give back as a police officer. I'm not talking about that. I got burned out, on law enforcement a while ago. And, even though I progressed through the ranks, I was really good at what I did. I just wanted to start a show where, I've been doing this job for so long, and you've been doing it for a while too. And how many cops do you come into contact with that are bitching all the time, that hate their jobs, that are, I can't wait to quit. I can't wait to do shit after, this stuff. And I just got tired of it. And, there was a point where I'm like, I'm just going to retire and do other things. And so I didn't answer your question, but there wasn't any kind of aha moment for me. It's just that it was it was kind of like a progression. It was like a culmination of things where I was just like, shit, I want to start the show, which I did, and, start blogging and stuff like that. And so for people out there that are listening, I would encourage you to do a self-assessment. I mean, as corny as it might sound, just ask yourself those hard friggin' questions, man. Be honest with yourself. Don't lie to yourself. You got to be honest with yourself on what you want with your life. If you are happy, in law enforcement and you're kicking ass, hey, more power to you. But if you're unhappy with your job or your department, fucking do something about it. You have the power.
100%.
Nobody else does. You have the power. You can make change. So again, people ask me all the time, like I said, how? How? It's a matter of why. Why are you doing the job, man? Why are you doing the job? Why do you get up every day and go to work? Because if it's just for a paycheck, you're not doing anybody any favor. Yeah, I'm not saying money isn't important, but if you're just at a job, whether it's law enforcement, whatever you're doing out there, working at Walmart, if you're just going for a paycheck, shit, I mean, there's got to be more to that, because you can go get a job anywhere.
It's so true, because it's like you're wasting your life, and the thing is, Pattrick, and I know you've seen this too. I can tell you right now, we just today we just lost one of our own. We lost a Maine State Trooper. He was a young guy. He came out. Yeah, he came out the academy literally months before I went in, and and it's devastating. But it gives you perspective, right? Like that's how quickly, and anybody who's watching, I know, or listening, I should say, we've all lost people in law enforcement, but maybe not. Maybe we've lost people in our lives. Like I know being a cop has given me very good perspective as how quickly it can go. Like it's done, how quickly life is over. Because prior to law enforcement, I was a very sheltered little girl. and but I quickly became unsheltered. But the thing is that you're right. Like what a waste of life. And I just want to say this, and Pattrick says it very diplomatically where I just come right out and say it to you. Like he says it very professionally. I'm just like, listen, you're friggin' wasting your life. Like, what are you doing?
Yeah.
Like you're going to sit there and you're going to, and you know what? I don't know if this was like one of my, this is like in the middle of like, I don't know, one of my shows, but I talk about Pattrick. There's one show where I say, stop talking shit. And I can't tell you how many cops I have sent to listen to this episode because it's literally the cops that pull up car to car, talk a bunch of shit all night long. I mean, this used to happen to me all the time. They would just come and dump on me. And then, which I didn't mind, but then there was no follow-up. So for me, if I was pissed off, there was always follow-up. If I told you I was going to do something, I went and did it. I was like, no, I'm going to go fucking do this. Yeah, I'm pissed. This sergeant, this corporal, this administration, this job, blah, blah. I'm pissed. But then I did something because at the end of the day, Sheepdog Nation, here's what you need to know. I'm not telling you to quit. Patrick's not telling you to quit. Obviously, he retired as a cop. I'm back in working, part-time. Due to an injury. So obviously we both love law enforcement, but here's the deal. Look at us. And I just want everybody to pay attention here because Pattrick he got 3 master's degrees. He got very highly educated. And then he started, this podcast and he blogs and he does, and I know that you write for Law Enforcement Today and you do a lot of things and you're an instructor. He's a college professor as well. Like he's doing all of these things. I'm very similar to him. I'm doing a ton of the actually very similar things because we realize that we have got to do things that light our souls on fire, And so it's maybe for you, it's not just one thing. Maybe it is just one thing, but my suggestion here, and the reason I'm going on this tangent is because I'm just so sick and tired of people staying stuck, staying unhappy, staying miserable. And I'm also preparing anybody. You never know what's going to happen to you at any given day. So don't just walk around and bitch and hate your life. Like Pattrick was saying, don't, it doesn't matter what your job is, number one. And number two, you always need to be prepared. You never know when you're going to be injured like me. You never know when, shit's going to roll so far downhill and it's going to be, the sides of a crater and it's going to knock you out like it did on me. One day I'm fine. The next day I'm, pulled off the road. Like, and I had to figure it out. Like, get ahead of that. Be prepared. Start thinking it now. Like, oh, do I want to blog?
Yeah.
Maybe I want to get my education,
Yeah, I agree. I couldn't agree more on it. I mean, you have to be versatile. I mean, I just believe in versatility. I knew a long time ago that, I had enough foresight to realize that, okay, I'm starting my law enforcement career, but I know that someday I'm going to retire. I'm going to leave or quit or whatever. So I had that foresight. So I started preparing myself years ago with, getting educated, going to college and doing different things because I knew that day would come. And, it always cracks me up when I hear, cops saying, well, I'm stuck. First of all, you're not fucking stuck. You can do whatever the hell you want. You're not stuck.
Right.
And, start doing shit now. And you're so right. I mean, everybody's dispensable, man. I know. I used to, again, I love talking to cops that think, well, shit, this place wouldn't survive without me. Are you fucking kidding me? They would. You get canned, you'd quit, and they'd have somebody right behind you. So,
100%.
You can't look at, especially in this day and age that we live in. Anything can happen, man. You're one foot chase away from getting hurt, and I'm not saying I hope that. But I'm just saying you have to be prepared for that day, and just be versatile, man. I mean, put your feelers out there. I mean, try different things. I mean, and a lot of cops are just afraid, like most people. I mean, you ask me, well, how did I how did I do it? You know, how did it just came to me when I was talking about it. What was the aha moment? It wasn't an aha moment, but I just got to the point on them where I was like, I don't give a shit what people think. Because a lot of people get wrapped up with, oh, fuck, what are my friends going to think of me if I start doing this podcast? And I got to the point where, you know, I don't care what people think. There's a great book out there by Mark Manson. I don't know if you've heard of it, saying and it's called The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck.
Yes, I have. I've read it.
It's a great, so it's an amazing book. It's not about being indifferent and not caring about anything, but the premise behind the book, you know, on it is, okay, what are you really going to concentrate on? And that's what he talks about is, are you going to give a fuck about everything? I mean, so what? Somebody's talking shit about you. So what? If I spent my whole career chasing after people that called me names and talk shit about me, that's all I would do. Same with, you know, if you want to write that book, write the book. If you want to start a podcast, start a podcast. And who gives a shit what people are going to say about you? But I think so many people they don't want to be judged. They don't want to be criticized. They don't want to be, I mean, God, I can't tell you how many times people have emailed me and said, oh, your show sucks. I'm like, well, you know, thanks for reaching out. You got to put yourself out there, man. And as cops, it cracks me up. You know this, Autumn. As cops, we can run into burning buildings and we can, you know, go to horrible car crashes and we can pull people out of dangerous situations, deal with idiots on the street. But shit, I ain't going to put myself out there when it comes to myself.
So true.
I don't want to do that.
So true.
I don't want people to laugh at me, man. I don't want my partners to laugh at me.
100%. And I'll tell you, it kept me not doing what I wanted to be doing for a long time. Absolutely. Absolutely. And yeah, the hater thing is real. And I'm glad that you touched upon that. But, you know, listen, I know a cop and he's a badass cop. And I really respect this guy. He is in fantastic shape. He's an all around fantastic police officer. And, you know, he mentioned to me recently, like when he gets out, he was thinking about, you know, opening up his own soap making business. And he's like, you know, but I'm a little worried, obviously, because it's not the typical, you know, he's really into working out and he's a CrossFitter and he's in excellent shape. And, you know, it's like, oh, you know, well, that's not what the typical thing is. And, you know, I got to tell you, when he told me that, I was like, you know what, like I respect you 100,000 times more than I did. And I had already a ton of respect for this guy because I'm like, that's true, like following your passion, following your heart, you know, and, it's going to take some big fucking kahunas to do it. And I'm proud of it. I'm like, good. And, you know, I was on some other podcast, the Squad Room, me and Garrett, we were having a conversation. He kind of said the same thing. He was like, you know, it gets a little bit frowned upon in the culture. Let's say if like, we don't all do the cop things. Right. So he's like, I know some officers that were part of a band. You know, and not everybody like everybody kind of was like, dude, like you play in a band, like, what do you, like, you're a singer? No, you're not, like, you suck, you know? And it happens. And it, you know, the culture, I don't know. It can get negative. People can get very negative, unfortunately.
Well, and that's why I say, you know, there's a saying out there, you know, you're the average of the 5 people you associate with. And again, I'm not saying don't hang out with your cop brothers and sisters. I mean, because I still do, but I have other friends outside of law enforcement on it, and I would encourage people out there to have other friends besides cops, because not all cops are negative, but the cops I know are, and they're happy to pull you down in the trenches with them if you allow it. And you know, when shit hits the fan, when you go through some negative shit in your life, you really understand who are your friends and who you thought were your friends, because they're no longer there. So yeah, I mean, I agree with you again. I mean, if you want to do something, you know, who gives a shit? I want to be surrounded by the people who are going, you know, fuck that, that's a great idea. Even though it's just, you know, it might be a ridiculous idea. They're pumping me up. They're, you know, teaching me to go for it. They're inspiring me. They're motivating me. And getting back to the officer you mentioned who wants to start the soap company. You know, I bet you anything, there's people in his circle that are saying, you're fucking stupid, dude. What do you want to do that shit for? And I would say to him, you know, take that person in small doses. Don't lament on what this person is telling you, or maybe it's a couple of people. You know, screw what they say. You know why? Because a lot of people, in my opinion, this is what I've learned over the years, Autumn, a lot of people that want to berate you and talk shit about you and hate on you are people that want to do what you're doing, but they're too fucking scared to do it.
Thank
you.
you.
So a lot of
100%.
their fears and insecurities are coming out when they're keeping you down. So you just got to ignore those people.
I love it.
Sometimes it's hard, the haters, because sometimes they're family members. But I have family members that it's not that I don't love them. I just don't want to be around them all the time. So I take them in small doses. You just gotta, again, I mean, the older I get, the more I realize, and I know it sounds corny, but dude, you have got to surround yourself with those right people. I mean, you have to. If you want to propel forward, if you really want to do things in your life, you just got to have those right people in your circle. And those are the people who are really going to help you out.
So it's so true. I love it. And man, for putting in 23 years, you're a very optimistic guy. Look at you, and I love it. I love your positivity, and I think obviously, Pattrick, you definitely walked your talk, and you are, and it shows, versus somebody who, we all know those officers that have put in even probably less time than you, and they do not do this, and they're not around. They, unfortunately, the job kind of ate them up. And
and I agree. But like I told you, Autumn, is I did not. I got tired of, I love the job. I just didn't like the internal organizational negativity and things like that. And if it's getting to a point where you don't want to go to work, something's wrong. You have got to change something. And for me, it was changing my mindset. It really was, again, not looking at everything from a negative standpoint, and really start doing things in my life that I had control over. And that's another thing. People try to control what, the outcome of certain things. You can't control everything. There's very little you can control. The one thing you can control, Autumn, is your mind, the way you think. The way you think. You can control your thoughts, and what you want to do in your life. You have total control over your thoughts, because if you really want to do something, if you really visualize, Autumn, you're going to be a best-selling author. I'm telling you, as corny as it might sound, your body's going to move subconsciously in that direction, and that's probably going to happen at some point in time.
100%.
I'm not saying it's going to happen overnight, but again, getting back to those negative officers, you have the power, man. Yeah. You have the power to wake up every morning and say, I'm going to be in a fucking bad mood all day, or I'm going to be happy and thankful I'm here, thankful I have a job, and thankful I'm alive, and, breathing and stuff like that. I mean, people ask me, okay, well, you wake up in the morning, what are you thankful for? That I open my fucking eyes, that I'm alive. That's the first thing. And then I look over at my wife and say, I'm thankful for my wife. I'm thankful for my kids. I mean, you just got to be, just grateful. And that's the one thing that I start out every day with. It's just being grateful that I have the people in my life.
100%.
It's not really about me. It's about the people that are in my life. I give all the credit to them.
And I love that. I love that. And, but it's who you chose to surround yourself with too.
Yeah.
You chose to surround yourself with good people who are, bringing you up and not bringing you down. So that's excellent. Something I've got to say, I recently, so I'm a big Tony Robbins fan. I have an idea that you might be a fan of that industry as well.
Who's that guy? I never heard of him.
You're kidding.
I've seen him. I've seen Tony Robbins. The guy's the man.
Isn't he the man? Oh, I freaking love that guy. So he said something in a video I was watching a couple nights ago, and he said, if you can take and change your mindset to appreciation instead of expectation, your entire life is going to change. And I was like, damn. Think about that. If you change your mindset from expectation, meaning if you stop expecting everything from everybody in the world and, expecting the PD to be this way and expecting your husband or your wife to be a certain way, and stop expecting, your sergeant to fucking come and pat you on the ass. Like, you know, and all these things, but you start appreciating when that shit happens, you start appreciating the situations that you're in and appreciating the job and yada, yada, just like what Pattrick just said, your whole entire life will change. Just so simple perspective change. And I thought that was excellent.
Yeah, and I used to love the officers really quick that used to not come to me and bitch about everything, but come to me with solutions, all right? Going back to that, it's easy to steal car and talk about shit. But I used to tell officers or sergeants when they'd come to me and they'd say, hey, Commander, I got a question. What do you think about this? And I'd say, I don't know. What do you think? What do you think? Not all the time, but the whole purpose was come to me with solutions. Now, sometimes I have to make quick decisions. I get that, like most cops. But come to, you know, it's like you said, those people that are just going to bitch about things without coming up with, you know, be part of the problem or the solution. Don't be part of the problem. So,
hands down. Couldn't agree more. Thank you for sharing that. Pattrick, just to wrap this up, do you have anything that you would like to leave Sheepdog Nation with? What would be some of your biggest advice that you could leave the nation with?
You know, I think some of my advice that I would, again, first of all, every one of you out there listening are doing an amazing job. I love law enforcement. I love each and every one of you, brave men and women that are out there doing a very tough job. But again, kind of like what we were talking about is, you know, if you have something that you want to do on the side, you know, don't go for it. I mean, we only have this one life. We're not here for a very long time. Just go for your dreams, man. And if that means, you know, going up the chain of command, go up the chain of command, more power to you. If that means doing a side hustle or starting something that you really wanted to do before, don't get rid of the naysayers and just go for it.
And just go for it. Thank you. Yeah, I love that. I love that. I love it. I love it. I love it. You know, especially because like it just, you know, I gotta say, I really freaking love this episode. And Sheepdog Nation, a couple of things I just want to say is if you're still here, you're fucking awesome. Number one. Number two, if you listen to, you know, podcasts like Pattrick's and I's, you know, you're already ahead of the game. I just want to say that because, you know, we're getting into it and we're telling you to change your perspective, change your mindset because, you know, when we were, you know, I know I can just say when I was in my cruiser on midnights, this is the shit that I would listen to. And it really changed me. It changed the game. Look where I am now. Look what I'm doing. Pattrick, same thing. It changed the game for him. Whereas if you take a look at the most of the population, everyone's still listening to their radio stations. You know, they're listening to the news. They're listening to shit that it doesn't, you know, they're listening to their music stations is what I was trying to say. And there's nothing wrong with music, but the amount of time we spend in our cars and our cruisers, you know, we can just grow our minds and, you know, it's always about growing, right? If we're not growing, then we're shrinking. You're never really at a plateau. You know, it's, that's a quote from Tony Robbins. You're either growing or you're shrinking and that's it. And so, you know, I love the perspective. I love listening, literally a watch commander, somebody who, you know, was overseeing sergeants and corporals and then who were seeing cops, like somebody who's not just, you know, who literally walked his talk right now, who, you know, is still married. His kids still really like him. Hey, imagine that. And, you know, and listen to this guy, like I just said a little bit ago, like Pattrick, you're still optimistic. You got, you know, you're still doing a lot of things for criminal justice. You're not out wiping your hands saying, fuck this, I hate this. And I just think it's key. So Sheepdog Nation, you know, go and re-listen to this, you know, and go head over to the CJ Evolution. You can go to the cjevolution.com. You're going to be able to go to the notes right below this, and you're going to be able to click on some links and go find Pattrick, find his podcast, which I really suggest that you do. But just already by you being here, you're ahead of the game. And so, you know, like Pattrick said, my hat's off to you, you know, and you got this. You got this.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. Yeah, I love it. And there's a really quick, there's a quote out there from Wayne Gretzky. Maybe you've heard of it, your listeners. You know, you miss 100% of the shots that you don't take.
So true. So don't let the haters, the negativity, that voice in your head, you know, keep you from not doing anything. Because I'm going to tell you right now, Sheepdog Nation, you've heard me say this 1,000 times. Pattrick talked about, you know, a little bit with him. If I told you how many haters, how many hate mail, how many comments, how many people slide up in my DM who talk so much shit to me, you know, about this and that, if you knew that and I shared that all the time, you'd be like, damn. But you know what? We don't care. I don't give a shit. I'm not doing this for anybody's opinion. I'm not doing this for anybody's approval. Fuck that. No.
That's why I love that's what I love about it. You're still here.
Yeah.
You're still kicking ass.
Thanks. Yeah. I don't give a fuck. I got knocked down. I got kicked in the diaphragm. That's my analogy. I did. I got kicked in the diaphragm, but you know what? I had to reset my mind. I had to adjust. I had to overcome, and I did. And I'm like, fuck that. Fuck you. Fuck everyone who's got an opinion that, I need to be approving of them. And not approving of them, that they need to, like, I'm seeking their approval, or I need to be fitting in. And you know what? Honestly, that is for anybody, any police officer, going out and trying to do some stuff. Like, you're going to come up against diversity.
Oh yeah.
And,
you have to face, and you it's a great point really quick, is you have to fail yourself to success. And a lot of people know that. There's some people that don't, meaning, Bill Gates didn't wake up one day and say, well, fuck, I'm a billionaire. I didn't have to go through any failure or anything. I mean, we all know the story about, Thomas Edison, who was like 1,000 times or something before he perfected the light bulb. So the point, all that, folks, is, if you fall off that horse, get back on the fucking horse and keep going.
Mm-hmm.
I used to work with a guy in particular who wrote a book. It was a short book, and he sent it to some publishers. I think it was 5 publishers, and they all shot him down. And I remember him car to car, and this was years ago, like you were saying, car to car, we got together. And he's like, oh man, Fitz. He's like, because I was always asking about his book. I was like, well, what's the status? And he was like, at one point we met, and he said, oh yeah, all 5 publishers that I pushed it out to, turned it down. I said, what are you going to do? He's like, well, I guess that's it. I was like, what the fuck are you talking about? Send it to 10 tomorrow.
Exactly.
Send it to 15 publishers. And you know what? Not that it was me, it was him. He got picked up by a publisher.
That's awesome.
Eventually. But it was, okay, what do you want to do, man? Do you want to just fucking quit?
Right.
And a lot of things for me, was just as, what was drilled into me in the Army too, Autumn, and as a police officer, but you don't fucking quit.
Mm-hmm.
You keep going and you keep going. And a lot of officers have that mindset. I just wish when it came to their personal stuff and what they wanted to do, especially with other ventures and stuff, that they want to do other things, a lot of them just get wrapped up in this analysis paralysis where they're so scared, what people are going to think. Who gives a shit?
100%.
Who cares? Like you said, I love what you said. I don't give a fuck. I don't give a shit what people say. You're still here. You're still here.
And exactly. And one other point, this is what happens when 2 podcasters get on an episode, everybody. I just want to point this out. This is going to be the episode that just fucking doesn't end. But I just want to say this too, like okay. Patrick, you brought up such a good point, like, as far as like, yeah, like, we are taught warriors mindset, right? We do not fucking quit. We don't quit. But as I can say specifically as a cop, like, we apply that just to, the job, like, because that's our comfort zone. Yeah. That's where our training, education, and experience comes in. But there's no translation. Like, cops literally, like, they take the uniform off and they're like, okay, who the fuck am I? Like, what do I do? Oh my God. I don't know who I am. That I just really want to say that is, it's how many times have I been knocked down? How many times have you been knocked down? Like, it's this thing where, like, you don't, like, come out of the gate going, I don't give a fuck, because that's not the truth. The truth really isn't. Like, I will say that, like, you have to, like, train yourself to, I don't give a fuck. You know what I'm saying? It's really, in my opinion, that's my opinion, because I could say that, but then I really did give a shit. I'm like, shit, I really do care that this person is pissed off about my, post, or they don't like my podcast. I got this email one time. It was like, your podcast would be much more well received if you didn't swear. But if I didn't swear, then that wouldn't be me. Like, that's who I am authentically. Yeah. And I can't tell you I've gotten so much shit about me swearing, but I'm like, listen, wait a minute. Like, my podcast I get it. It's not for everybody. Totally. It's not. Yeah. But it's, for me, it's about what it's like when you're shooting the shit car to car with a cop. Most cops, this is how it is. And so that, and so you kind of, so it's just like you, like what you said, like, you fall off the horse every single time. Get back up, up, get going. And you will eventually, hopefully, just learn not to give a shit. And
Yeah. I mean, look at kids real quick. Look at kids. I mean, most of your listeners have kids. I mean, my kids are older now, but I remember looking at my kids when they were like toddlers. And, you know, they literally, if you have a kid out there who's a toddler or crawling around, look at your kid. They're at that phase where they just don't give a shit.
Mm-hmm.
They try everything. I mean, look at them. They're fearless. You got to tap back into that mindset. But you know what happens on them is as we grow up, as we get indoctrinated or whatever you want to call it, conditioned through society, we are taught that, oh, you can't do that. You know, you got to stay within the herd. You know, because if you come outside the herd, well, you might fail. You might. Well, who gives a shit?
Right.
What's the worst that's going to happen? And a lot of the things that we worry about never freaking come to fruition. Never even happen. So anyway.
No, 100%. No, it's so true. Well, I just want to say thank you so much. This is a jam-packed episode. The sheepdogs who listen to this are really going to get a ton out of it. I can't thank you enough for coming onto my podcast and having me on yours. And I really, really appreciate you. I appreciate your work. And Sheepdog Nation, like I said, you're going to be able to go scroll down right now. You can go check out how to get a hold of Pattrick. You can go check out his podcast. It's the CJ Evolution. You can go to his website, cjevolution.com. He's also on Instagram, which is where I hang out the most. So thank you so much, Pattrick. I really appreciate having you here.
Autumn, you rock. Keep up the great work with your show.
Thank you. Sheepdog Nation, I will see you next time.
And that was another episode of Sheepdog Nation. If you enjoyed this podcast, please go to iTunes and let us know by giving us a rating. If you have questions that you want answered by Autumn in the podcast, submit it by going to the link in the show notes. As always, stay safe and watch your six.